Welcome to the AXPONA Audio Insider Podcast. My name is Lenny Florentine, and today I have EveAnna from Manley Labs. What's happening? It's great to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too. I'm surprised we've never met, but here we are.
I know, right? It's crazy. I hear so much about what you guys do at Manley Labs, and frankly, I have a lot of questions and curiosity because I am not the most familiar with the brand, but everybody that I know is very familiar with you.
We've only been doing it since 1988.
Right? It's just, that's almost to where I've almost been doing life. So
exactly.
So we'll get started because I know you started the company, correct? It's named after you.
Along with David Manley, who first husband, who originally founded Vacuum Tube Logic in England and then in California with his son Luke. And then I joined those guys in 1989.
So is that how you got into HiFi or Pro Audio? I know there's kind of two different sectors. What was there one that came first? Was Pro first?
No, the HiFi audiophile stuff was first because back then in the late 1980s, there was huge demand for these big tube amplifiers from Hong Kong and Taiwan. And David created the Manley brand as this upper echelon second brand to be able to have two different importers in both of those territories and sell twice as many pallets of big tube amplifiers. So you've got it. Oh, you were just a kid then or getting born, but back then, vacuum tubes were sort of almost dead. And David Manley did make a lot of noise in the late 80s, early 90s and contribute greatly to the, you could say, modern renaissance of vacuum tube amplifiers. Because back then, you still had Macintosh that had also gone highly solid state. You had Audio Research still kicking around. You had Conrad Johnson, and there were, Carry Audio wasn't born yet. For instance, all the HiFi did not exist at all, right? And there were some companies here and there, but when Vacuum Tube Logic came out, he made a lot of noise with that company. It really. And they wrote a propaganda book called the VTL book that also spelled out a lot of ways why vacuum tubes are superior, and it helped educate people and explain why everyone should not forget about the good old vacuum tube. And back then there were still vacuum tubes being made in the United States also by GE.
Wow. Okay.
Times were quite different back then, but that's when the origins of the Manley brand started from within VTL, and it predated the Pro Audio line by 2 years.
Wow. And is that how you got into this? Were you into HiFi before this?
I was into college. I was at Columbia studying music, and I got inspired to not graduate without knowing what I was going to be doing in the music industry. So I drove my little red Volkswagen out to California, and I thought I was going to go to San Francisco and work for Bill Graham Presents. And I stopped in LA, and through some of my stepfather's old Ampeg contacts, because he used to own Ampeg in the late 60s.
Wow, your dad owned Ampeg?
He did. So he gave me a couple names.
As a vintage audio guy, because that's kind of what I'm known for, is doing a lot of vintage stuff. This is really an interesting conversation already.
It's a story that has been told many times, and I'm happy to tell it again. But yes, so yeah, he gave me a few contacts, and I dialed up on that rotary phone, and the first guy did not answer the phone, and the second guy at Fender did, and then put me in touch with David Manley, who hired me onto the production line at Vacuum Tube Logic of America. That was end of January 1989.
Okay, so you've been in it for a while, and you guys still make everything in the U.S.?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow,
Yeah,
that should be commended as well.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a mission, and we've got 32 employees at Manley Labs in Chino, California. And also, our activity spiders out to a lot of other local businesses, machine shops, the powder coating facility, the anodizers, the mechanical engravers that do the rotary engraving on our microphones, for instance, and parts distributors and throughout America, we buy a ton of raw material from the USA. That's something I take great pride in. It's one way I express my patriotism. Building the local tax base. That's how all my employees. We've all grown up together, basically. And we've been able to buy houses in the area, and they've all raised their families. I've raised my barky dogs, which you will hear bark, um, and and also supporting all the other local businesses that grows our local economy here in Southern California. But
That's
additionally,
amazing. I love that you're
by
into the local
capacitors
economy.
from Reliable Caps, who are now owned by Wilson Audio in Utah. Uh, Gray Hill switches come from Illinois. Cornell Dublier electrolytic high-grade capacitors come from South Carolina. Ohmite resistors, also from Illinois. The David Josephson microphone capsules from Santa Cruz, California. So there's a lot of dollars of the Manley products is completely sourced in America, as well as fully assembled in America.
That's amazing. And I had this whole plan on asking how the pro equipment translated into the HiFi gear, but now come to find out that I was
It's
wrong, and
the
then it was
other
the
way.
opposite way.
Yeah.
So we could touch, because I know your pro equipment's really popular. I just want to touch on that real quick because I think that's important because it all kind of goes together. I guess then the opposite question is, how does the HiFi gear and pro equipment kind of tie in at all, or how are you guys known in that pro world that I'm not super familiar with, but everybody that I know is?
Well, also in 1989, that's when David Manley won a contract, like design competition with a large religious organization, I'll just say, for some microphone preamplifiers. And they had just purchased a George Massenburg console at their facility, and they wanted 60 channels of outboard microphone preamps to go along with that console. And they chose the Manley design. And so all of the sudden, we're in the pro audio business because they picked David's design. So we built those 60 units and then developed the Manley version of the classic Pultec equalizer. And those were the first two pro audio products. One of the first experiences I had back in 1989 was frequently going to Precision Mastering in Hollywood, where they had our big tube amplifiers driving a bunch of Infinity speakers at the time. And every
Were
new...
they Kappas?
Yes, Kappa 9s. Yes. And every one of our brand new prototypes we would take down there, like those Pultec EQs, for instance, and they were our alpha and beta testers, basically. And they loved the gear. Stephen Marcuson and Larry Emrine, who owned the company, they loved the gear, and they supported us with every piece of gear we ever brought out that was useful in a mastering environment. So why I'm telling that story is because that's the mastering room is where the recording environment and the audiophile environment converge. Because in a mastering studio, you want to have a kick-ass playback system that you can really hear into to be able to make the final decisions of the compression and the EQ and the levels and the whole vibe of the record that you're going to then mass replicate. So I learned very early on, being in that situation, that's where I trained my ears for how to listen. And the that's the audiophile side of things, is listening to the playback. And of course the recording end of things, and I'm not a recording engineer. Recording in side of things is, how to capture the sound in a room, in an environment. But
So
mastering,
getting to the audiophile side of things. All
yeah,
right, so
mastering
I've
is
been
where the reference is, for me at least. Folks always, they're like, "Oh, it sounds just like the symphony hall." It's like, well, I hope not. I hope it sounds like I heard it played back in the mastering studio. That's my reference, because that's where the record was made. That's
right.
where the
No, that makes
final
total
decision
sense.
was. It should sound like that or better in your room.
Love it. I love it. And I'm looking at some. You guys actually have a pretty good amount of hi-fi products. And is everything tube
Uh,
for the most part? I mean, I
yeah.
saw like an RCA switcher, which is super cool. And
Okay,
but
there are no tubes in the Manley Skipjack RCA switcher.
everything else looks like it has tubes.
Correct. And most everything else is all tube designed. I mean, the phono stages have a FET underneath the tube. But otherwise, in our hi-fi line, I think everything else is all tube.
So I'm looking at, you have the one that catches my eye is this big, like almost, I guess it looks like it's a triangle shaped, or it's like just a big tube amp.
The
It
Stingray.
is the Stingray. It looks like a Stingray. Okay. See, if I would have just did a little more research or remembered the name, we'd have been good. I think that looks so cool.
Thank you.
And I can imagine that it sounds amazing. But like with all your products, what is like your like go-to staple product that you guys make that everybody kind of talks about?
Well, that
Do you
Stingray
have one in particular?
that was my first solo hi-fi design after,
The Stingray?
yeah, after David Manley left the company in 1996, and we got divorced in 99. That sets up the timeline for everything there. But upon his departure, I was already running the company, and then it became my opportunity, my turn to show what I could do. So that Stingray was my first solo design, and we developed brand new output transformers for it. The shape of the Stingray is really a square with its corners cut off, actually. But I did some things like those corner pillars with the integral feet and so on. But we used a different input and driver stage than David's prior designs, and a brand new output transformer. And developing that output transformer, we had just started our magnetics department winding audio transformers. And it was so fascinating to be able to play with the design, calculate new parameters, measure things, and then switch between them. And it's like, well, the old one measured better, but it doesn't sound very good. It's kind of boring. Let's try this, redo that. And it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty vibey and pretty cool. And really, really work on that relationship between empirical data and emotional data, really, in the feel of things. So I purposefully designed that output transformer to make that amplifier sound like a bigger amplifier than its 40 watts leads you to believe, right? Um, that was a pivotal point in the Manley line, definitely. After that, my favorite tube amplifiers that we make, I think the coolest sounding ones overall, are the Manley snappers, and those are 100-watt 4 EL 34s. A completely different topology from every other tube amplifier that we make. It's a fully balanced all the way through, although it can be used in a single-ended mode as well. Single-ended input mode. The output tube topology is push-pull always. Just want to clarify that. But the output transformer is a really interesting design. It's a true 19-section wind. It's a center tapped output, which means the binding posts are not ground. It's negative and positive, where the ground is buried inside. It's a really fantastic measuring amplifier. I mean, it produces all the power at 12 hertz at 100 watts. You know, it measures awesome, and it sure sounds great too. Those snappers are fantastic 100-watt monoblocks, and you would be hard pressed to beat them with put any other tube amplifier against them, watt for watt. I mean, match them up. Those snappers.
I mean, 100 watts on a tube, like it's not a solid state amp, and 100 watts is a lot. And I mean, it looks like a great build. It's very symmetrical too. I like that.
It's such a great sounding amplifier. It really, really is. So I'm very, very proud of the technology in that amplifier.
So would you say like you guys have a certain sound profile at all?
Well,
or like if it's somebody like me, I've never heard one of your amps I mean, I may have heard it at a show here or there. I mean, I go to a lot of rooms, but it's usually really fast. What would I expect to hear? I know you're trying to make it sound like the recording of the studio, but is there a certain like profile that I would expect to hear from my music?
With most of the equipment, yes. I tend to flavor the Manley sound with less flavor, you know, and try to be very truthful and honest with the sound, and very punchy and beautiful sounding, but not restricted in any of the frequency extremes. Truthful and integrity is a great word. You know, I like to present the sound with integrity. That said, different models have different purposes. Like I just described that Stingray output transformer, how, you know, we specifically designed it. I won't say tuned it, but designed it to allow it to saturate a little bit more in the bass than, you know, you can see that, but it gives this kind of meat to the sound that makes it sound like a bigger amp. So that was purposefully done for that way, you know. And it's like, well, why didn't you know, I mean, we could have made like a physically larger output transformer, or increase the cost or whatever, you know, but we're trying to deliver a package with a lot of different parameters considered, you know. The snapper, and then our 250 watts and 500 watt big power amps, monoblocks, I'd say they're all, you know, they're strong sounding, and they're beefy sounding, and they're very fast. Then
500, a 250 and a 500 watt tube amplifier is also very you really got your stuff in order here, because
yeah, bro,
that's also almost unheard of.
Let's preach about the retail cost of these products is just hovering around $20,000 for the pair of amplifiers.
Well, I noticed with your Stingray, I thought the price was very reasonable.
Yeah, let's talk about those big boys, because I just saw another company. I'm going to be really polite here and not name the other two companies I'm thinking of that are also made in America. One of them just launched 400 watt amplifiers, $100,000. Okay, so kids, you can spend around 20 grand on 500 watts of Manley power, or you can spend $100,000 for, you know, that kind of blows my mind, really. And I want to just remind folks that we're a great value for money. It's no nonsense. You're not getting all this freaking marketing copy, and you know, I
was very surprised. Like when I saw that price,
and we've got a reasonable markup, and the dealer has his markup, and you pay that. We're not multiplying by more fingers than you have on your hands. Come on.
And to know that you're able to do that and locally source almost everything is amazing, which kind of brings me to the next
Well,
question that I
say
have.
the other companies do that too. They're just marking it up many more times than we are.
Wow.
Okay, and the other company located in the north center of the country, um, is doing a similar thing, and they've got, a 500-watt amplifier, or 400-watt amplifier, also for like $90,000 for the pair of them. I'm sure it's a fine experience, of course, but you could also buy a car with the $80,000 that you save
Pretty nice. Yeah.
on
Pretty
your
nice car.
power amps. I mean, look, if you've got all that money and you want to spend it on your audio, go for it. If you want to spend it on Manley Audio, I'd be even happier.
So is it
Nothing against those companies. All respect for them. They they must have different business models than I do, and you know, there you go. If
how
you
has it been
you
being
do an
in the
audio
tube
comparison
business?
with the 3 brands I'm talking about, like, I think one would be happy with any of the choices.
Sure. So has it been difficult being in the tube business the past, I don't know, 5 years or so? Because I know wherever tubes are sourced, a lot of that's changed, and there's been a lot of fluctuations in the market for tubes. Has that put any strains on you guys over the past 5 years? Have you been able to navigate it pretty well?
Yeah, well, when the Russians invaded Ukraine, all of the sudden, vacuum tubes everywhere around the world disappeared overnight because everyone went and grabbed
Hmm.
them because Russia make I think Russia make the best quality vacuum tubes on the planet right now. And that factory is owned by Mike Matthews of New Sensor Corporation, based in New York. So it's an American owned factory in Russia. And New Sensor slash Electro Harmonics, um, they have been I praise dog every day for Mike's existence and that company's existence, keeping those excellent vacuum tubes in production, because there are Chinese tubes, there are uh, Czech Republic tubes, and there are the Russian tubes, and that is about it. Besides the 300B being produced in Georgia, Georgia as in United States state of Georgia. Um, Other than that, there are no tubes made anywhere else on the planet right now. So when a war causes sanctions to go on those Russian tubes overnight, and then everyone panics about the future availability of those tubes, that are, I don't know what percentage of the world's tubes are being supplied by them, but it could be half. I don't know, but it could be. Um, it sends a panic across the world. So at that moment, everyone realized that we were all understocked with vacuum tubes and we needed to hoard up. We needed to make sure that we had enough backstock to be able to survive some other geopolitical event such as that. So fortunately, the sanctions were still on, but the supply worked itself out and we were able to get supply. But yeah, back back then, I used extra cash to be able to backstock, at least a year's worth of supply, so we wouldn't, because everything we build practically has vacuum tubes in it, and yeah, we've got to be able to get those tubes.
So is there a certain type of speaker that you just personally, whether everything's going to be somebody's idea, but is there a certain type of speaker that you think work best with your, and I'm not talking, you don't have to name a brand or anything, but just a type of speaker that you think works really well with your amplifiers? Do you have anything in mind?
Well, again, you've got to match it. They have to match together. So I usually advise people to settle on their speaker choice first, because I mean, I'm not saying all amplifiers sound the same, but there's a kind of commonality to amplifying a signal and not losing anything, and not really adding anything much either. So the big variable is going to be your loudspeaker, because there's so many different architectures, and there's small speakers, big speakers, floor standing. In a recording studio, you can have a soffit or a wall mounted speaker. You can have active speakers, you can have passive speakers, you can have horns, you can have ribbons, you can have planar speakers, you can have 3-way, 2-way. There's so many variables with loudspeakers, and of course, visually and aesthetically, there's even more variables. And then price. I mean, are you spending $2,000 on speakers? Or are you spending $200,000 on speakers? All of these things, I think the customer, you've got to sort that out first. What floats your boat? Do you love the Martin Logan electrostatic vibe and the sparkly sound that those give? Do you like old fashioned, like tannoy/fine audio? Do you like those dual concentrics? Do you like horn speakers? Whatever. Pick your speaker first, and then we analyze what's its impedance curve look like. Is it kind of friendly for vacuum tubes? How much power do you really need? How big's your room? There's a lot of factors to start pointing you towards which amplifier you should buy next. And then the customers, like, do I want a solid state amp? Do I want a vacuum tube amp? Do I want a cool class D amplifier like Bruno Putzi's designs? If you're coming my way with the vacuum tube amplifier desire, okay, then we'll set you down. And it's like, well, how much power you need? Well, maybe you just bought some 98 dB efficiency horn speakers. Well, let's listen to our 300B amplifiers. Those are.
I know. I'm curious. I just got a pair of we're bringing a pair of the Klipsch Scala AL6s into our store.
Sure.
And it's that they love tubes. The Klipsch Heritage stuff really loves tubes.
They love those Manley Mahis. Those are.
There we go. I have to look at those.
Yep. And so, your first question was like, what do you like? And my first answer to that was remembering with great fondness, like the first audiophile speakers I encountered when I came out to California were those Infinities and the Kappa 9s at Precision Mastering. I listened to those extensively. And then we had a pair of Infinity Betas at home, with the 4 big towers. And David built these 1,000-watt Manley amplifiers with 24 output tubes. And those are driving, which were they? They were driving the top panels. And then we had Manley 350s on the woofer cabinets. And he had a reel-to-reel tape machine, and he had some one-off copies of lots of cool master tapes. And oh my God, we used to make the house shake with that, literally. Like playing that Dark Side of the Moon during Money, during the guitar solo. If you ever listen to that on a big, big system, there's a rumble that happens. And I don't know if it was like a tube, as in the subway, rumbling under the studio or something, but there's a giant rumble that happens during the guitar solo. And I was new to California. I remember like, oh, earthquake, and then we stopped the tape machine. It's like, whoa, the earthquake went away. Oh, God damn, wow. That's on the recording. But
it's you guys causing all
those big woofers were able to reproduce that. That was just so exciting. It was so much fun. That system was a blast. It was so fun. And then we had RS1Bs after that, which were kind of downscaled from those betas. And then we got in bed with Tannoy when they were still making that 10-inch paper cone dual concentric. And we'd used lots of Tannoy speakers. We were very close with the company, and I'm still a big Tannoy fan as well. We had those big Klipsch corner horns for a time, and those were a great tool to be able to develop power amplifiers because they were so efficient. They would show all the flaws. Like if there was any little hum or buzz in the design, the Klipsch would let you know, and you better get that buzz out of that amplifier before you get it into production, you know. So in modern times, I've swayed over to the passive ATC speakers. That's what I have like here on my desk, for instance, driven by a very old Manley Stereo 100-watt amplifier that's sitting below. I'm touching it with my feet. I've used this one amp for like 30 years.
Wow.
I like the ATCs a lot. You know, a whole nother thing I'll you know, powered speakers, the best powered speakers are those Key Audios, man. Bruno Putsi's again comes through with the most amazing system design. I'll give a shout out to Key Audio during my Manley podcast here.
I've heard about these, and I've actually talked to him a couple times, and I was unable to see him at AXPONA this year. And I was pretty bummed out because just I haven't heard them, but looking at them, I feel like they're going to sound good.
Yeah, pursue those. Those are great. I'll get you in touch with the people that you need to talk to because we're also like corporately very close to them as well because we've all worked together in one form or another over the decades as well.
That's amazing. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. It was great. I had a fun time.
Thank you.
I did have to ask before we go. I heard you're into bikes.
I'm into motorbikes. Yes, I'm a member of the Pasadena Motorcycle Club, and I am the club secretary.
Wow. Okay. So California's got to be a great place to go riding, especially up and down. I'm not familiar. I've never been, but I assume I watch a lot of travel stuff that it's got to be beautiful out there riding up and down.
Well, this weekend coming up, we've got the 79th annual Pasadena Motorcycle Club Greenhorn Ride that starts on Saturday. It's a 2-day ride. It's been going on for 79 years. And it's a historic thing. And this year we're going up through Central California and through the oil fields and through the sequoias and over the mountain pass. And then we end up in Lone Pine at the foot of Mount Whitney in the Alabama hills. And I can't wait. It's going to be amazing.
That does sound amazing. Actually, it sounds really fun. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was great getting to spend time with you, EveAnna. And hopefully, you know, everybody will get to come out and then see your amps at different shows in AXPONA next year. And
we'll see you at AXPONA next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for Lenny, Florentine, and EveAnna from Manley, we appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you guys next time.